Alright, so everyone who's been on our Instagram knows that I've been hinting at doing something in the Killy Corner, and maybe if you've been listening to the podcast, I don't know what order I've been hinting this in and that, but this is the Killy Corner. This is, every tank here is devoted to Killies. And if you're, depending on how these videos come out, Ben has been hosting a series on mock spawning. And so, of course, that meant me being competitive. I have to do one on substrate spawners because that's what I have more fun with. So, I was going to go step by step through the process. What I've got here is the substrate. The substrate in question is I use compressed bricks of terrarium coconut husk like substrate. I have worked with the non-compressed substrate, and it takes forever to sink. So start with the compressed bricks, just shave off however much you need, hydrate it, make sure it sinks. It will stain the water a little bit. The choice of coconut husk is important to me because the hobby standard is peat, which is unsustainably harvested. So I have a couple substrate spawners, and of course the tank I want to pull from, the male is courting right now, so I'll probably pull from this tank instead. So the trick is that you'll get these going, and then you'll leave it in for like a week or two, and then you can swap them out, or in this case I don't have enough containers, so it usually means I move on to another species after a few rounds. But you might actually want to get in here because they're actually diving.
Might be a little awkward, but we'll be fine. Wow. That's so cool. Look at him go. You could talk over this if you want to, then we can actually use it for something.
So the fun thing here is that this is the great thing about animals. They do not work on your time schedules. They do things whenever they want to. So, you know, you just kind of have to work around it, I guess, or enjoy it when you can.
Left at the altar, huh?
Aww.
That's alright. At least we got to see him do it. Now he's going to come up and be handsome.
He just likes attention.
Uh-huh. He's gorgeous.
So this is the Nothobranchius rochii. That is argued to be the most beautiful freshwater fish in the hobby. I don't entirely agree with that, just because I have things I like better, but I can't disagree with anyone that says that's their personal pick for that title.
Cool.
That's pretty cool.
I'll let him get back to business.
Yeah.
Without distracting.
So in this case, I was originally planning on this guy, but since they're doing stuff right now, I'm going to pull this instead. And just decant some of the water off the top, just to make it a little easier to move. And then you're going to get a little bit of floaties, but that's the name of the game with substrate spawners. Alright, so now we've collected eggs.
Cool. What's next?
What's next is I'm going to show you how to strain them and then bag them for incubation, and that is going to require a location change. So I'm going to admit our air pump for the entire basement's right here, so our audio might be a little janky right here, but this is where the magic happens, so you're going to want to stay in for this. Alright, of course it's a little deli cup, so you got to pop the lid off. And then you want a fine mesh net, and then you just want to dump it all out. I don't use glass containers, so I have to weigh mine down. So you're going to see me pull out a little rock out of here. And then you want as much of the stuff as you can find, get out of there. Alright. And then you want to give it a good squeeze. There's my rock. I'm going to set it here so I can rinse everything off and get everything going again. And now we're doing another location change. So this is where everything is going to feel a little bit like a cooking show because I got this desk of destiny right here. So then you're going to take your substrate and just kind of dump it out. And you want like a paper because you want to be able to absorb a little bit of the water. One of the big differences between working with coconut husk and peat is that peat is way better at retaining water. So a lot of people will actually leave peat out to dry for like an hour or so. Another, at least in my head, a benefit of working with coconut husk is I don't have to do that. And I'm going to step out of frame real quick here because I forgot my cup. Okay, I'm back. Then you just got to bag up your goodies. Yeah. I generally recommend less stiff paper, but this is what I had available to me. Because if it's a little bit more flexible, it gives way easier, and then you don't get these little creases like right there where substrate will, you know how when you're just trying to get like one ice cube out of a drink and you tilt it towards yourself and then you like can't get any out and then they all come out? That's what I'm trying to avoid right now, but you know, with fish eggs. Yeah. All right. I mentioned a movable work surface. Just gonna wipe that up. And then you want to basically bag it just like you would fish. You want a little bit of air. And with this particular species, you're looking at least a 12-week incubation time. So I'm going to tie it up real tight because you don't really want the eggs to get compressed or while they're in this phase. It's like if you squeeze them a little bit or bounce them around, that doesn't really bother them. But so I like to put the species name, which pair it is, and then I don't put the date that's collected because then every time I look at it I have to do the math. What I do now is I'm doing the math right now. Okay. And then you write the date that they're ready. It's way easier that way. And there. You find a neat little spot for those to hang out for, in this case, 12 weeks. And then in 12 weeks, you get to unwrap it. Now this is Australebus nigripens. So these ones don't have a 12-week, they have a 10-week incubation time. So in this case, I was only incubating for 11 weeks just because slight delays in filming, but you know, as is showbiz, I guess. Yeah. Don't need that. And then you just open her up, dump it out. I like to spread them out a little bit. Just doesn't really help anything because once you pour the water in. So this is dechlorinated tap water, nothing fancy. Some people will use mature tank water. I'm not really for it just because in the first few days you're going to be feeding a lot of little foods and that'll kind of mess with the water anyways. And in this case, that's really it. In a few hours they'll hatch. They're immediately big enough that I can get them on Moina, and it's just the churn and burn of feeding and keeping the tank clean for fry. I like to leave them in this basin for the first week just because I want them to have a little bit more size on them before I move them. With the Killies, I will, if I have enough of them that I think it's worthwhile, I'll move them into a 2.5 or a 10 if I have like a dozen or more. But if I only have like 4 to like 8, I just keep them in a 2.5 and I keep just doing a couple water changes a week on them because in a 2.5 it's like I literally dunk this in and that's my water change. It's real easy. So these particular pearl killies were their same parents as the ones that I just hydrated here, but they were hatched 2 weeks ago. And it really blows my mind how big they are already. It's amazing. Killifish do not kid around when it comes to growing, because I'm more used to betta, and betta are fairly slow growing for the first like month or two. And so the fry you're seeing now are 2 weeks old, and they're about the size that I would expect from a betta fry that's like twice as old. It's amazing. So that's my way of pitching substrate spawning killies. I highly recommend it. The nice thing is I mentioned these took an extra week. The nice thing about incubating killifish eggs is that it's a range of time, not a you have to do it on this day or they're all going to die. In fact, we often recommend that you, when you get your first hatch of eggs, re-dry the substrate and then wet it again like 2 weeks later. So this is actually eggs that I'm in the process of drying to rehydrate in like 2 weeks, because you'll often get a second hatch, and the second hatch can be larger than the first hatch, believe it or not. Killifish come from habitats that dry up every year, and so there might be a false start to the rainy season, so it's beneficial to have the genetics of, well, the first time it rains, some of them are going to hatch, and then the second time it rains, all of them are going to hatch. So that gives you a lot of leeway in, oh, do I really want to deal with fish fry now? Do I want to, like, the stated range for most nothos is like 12 to 16 weeks, but I've experimented and waited as long as like 20 weeks and didn't have a problem. So, and Ben has some more extreme stories on that matter, but that's why I really like the substrate spawners over the mop spawners, because you get to decide when you want to deal with baby fish. If you're not ready to deal with it this weekend, do it next weekend, or even the weekend after that, maybe a month from now. So, tune into our podcast if you want more specifics on killifish. If you like what you saw here, let us know. I am now realizing that these killifish videos are the first from the breeder lab that I think are being released on the YouTube channel, so please tell us what you think of it down here. This is probably in frame a little bit. This is the breeder rack where I'm working on some other things. If you can get a glimpse of what's there, props to you. You're pretty cool. Like and subscribe. Check us out on Facebook. You can always visit the gallery. We are open to the public still. Stay safe out there. Keep those hands wet. Until next time.